Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't have any margin for error? Maybe you were backing up your trailer, and maybe your spouse is saying, yeah, keep on backing up, and you're like, because you're one sneeze away from having to pay for somebody's mailbox. There's just no margin left in there. Some weeks are like that. There's no margin. There's no space for something big to happen. Maybe the bills are tight, or the schedule is packed, or the kids need everything, and work is pressing, the phone is buzzing, and then one more thing added. If one more thing happens, it's just going to unhinge you, right? That's how many people live life. That's how many of us live life. There's no room for one more thing. There's not room for one unexpected bill, or one broken vehicle, or one unexpected catastrophe, and we're living lives that way. We're living lives as if though we don't have any limits. It's like this balloon. We tend to fill our time with stuff. And we're like, okay, I can handle it. And you put some more in there, like, man, I can handle more. And maybe God built you to be a high-capacity person, and you add more. And it's very hard to reduce the activities you start doing, and so you add some more. Who's getting nervous? That's how we live life, We're like super nervous. We pack it up, and there's no room for anything else. And for many of us, all we need is more space. And we're living life like Job, when he says, I have no peace, I have no quietness, I have no rest. Only trouble comes. Only trouble comes. And we're standing here in this new series, From Burnout to Balance, how to recreate and bring back a restoring margin into our lives, because many of us have overloaded lives. Now, when I say margin, many of you are thinking, is that like, what is margin? And let me just simply define margin this way. Margin is the space between my current load or activities and my limits, my breaking point. It's that space between, this is what I have, this is what I'm doing, and this is what my breaking point is. And so there's that gap, right? And for many of us, we have no gap. We're right in the edge of a breaking point, because we haven't created the space. We've filled the space like with a balloon, with a whole bunch of air, with a whole bunch of activities. Now we know margin because we see it visibly. For example, if you go on the road, you're driving. If you keep on the road, you're supposed to be safe, right? And then on your right side, you have what? A shoulder, right? Hopefully you have a shoulder. And the shoulder is designed. It's there to protect you from the danger beyond the shoulder. Right? It's designed to create a space between your safe zone, right, and what could be dangerous, a ditch or whatever it may be, something, a fence or gravel or whatever. And that margin there, that space, relieves you. You feel like, oh, good, I got some margin. I don't know how many of you have been in the bad situation of a deer coming in front of you. I have. And that margin, that shoulder, oh my goodness, never been happier for that. Because you averted an accident, catastrophe. And we see it in the physical world. We see margin when you walk into a space and you have enough room to move. Right? You're not crowded. There's enough margin, and margin feels good. Some of you know margin because your Bibles have some margin in the paper, in the sheet, right? And that margin is designed to help you read better or write some notes. And we feel good when there's margin, even in a book or in a Bible. If you've ever seen somebody's Bible that has no margin, oh my goodness, you feel overwhelmed. Margin and from a visible place when you're looking at your bank account and there's money left over at the end of the month. You're like, okay, that's margin. But there's also unseen margin. And that margin is your emotions, emotional margin, and spiritual margin, and moral margin, and relational margin. And when we don't have margin in our lives, that space between our load and our activities and the breaking point, then several things happen. We get stressed out. We start radiating stress, much like some of you started radiating that stress when this balloon started getting really big. That's what the absence of margin does. You feel it inside. It's like, oh boy, this is about to blow up. We tend to get self-absorbed when we don't have margin. All we can think about is ourselves. We don't have time to think about somebody else and what their needs may be. We have no time to volunteer, to be part of a weekend and help people out because we're self-absorbed. We just can the only person we can think about is me, myself, and I. We zone in on ourselves. What we need to get done. When we don't have any margin, we're actually relationship poor. Relationship poor. We're relationship poor with our kids because we're all doing all these activities. Relationship happens in the margins. Marriages become relationship poor because there's so much activity that you don't invest in your own relationships. Relationships happen in the margins. We know people, but we don't have the space for people when we don't have any margin. So this morning, I want to talk to us and see what are the steps we need to take in order for us to create this space between our breaking point and our activities, our current load. And here's the first thing I want to suggest to you, and that is accept your human limitations. Which implies that you first recognize that you have limitations and that you admit that you have limits. And we abandon this Superman syndrome. Many of us act like if we're just invincible and we can just absorb all sorts of activities and things. And we're not Superman. The psalmist put it this way in Psalm 119, verse 96. He said, "To all perfection I see a limit. To everything good I see a limit. But your commands are boundless." In other words, even perfection has a limit. I've been watching a historical series on the different empires. I love history, and particularly I love history that deals with empires and the rise and fall. And one of these series that I was looking at, the Roman Empire, was talking about how at some point it felt like it was perfect until it wasn't. Until it wasn't. It's because even perfection has limits. We have to remember that, after all, we're only human. We're not indestructible. God is the author of limits, and He knows our limits best. And unfortunately, we aren't very good at knowing our limits. We tend to overestimate our abilities and underestimate our capacity to deal with that of which we've already absorbed. We live in a culture that says, you go, you do one more thing. It's a go, 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 don't stop kind of culture. And yet, Job chapter 14, verse 5, it says, man's days are determined. They're determined. Matter of fact, even in Acts chapter 17 or 19, it talks about how our place where we live is determined, so that we may seek God. And this says, you have decreed the number of His months. God knows when your time is up, right? He knows when your time is up. We can't escape that. And have set limits He cannot exceed. It's like there's some limits that we can't exceed. Job's language points to God marking out human boundaries, human limits. God knows our days, and He also knows our limitations. God is not surprised when you get tired. God is not like, oh my gosh, they're tired already? He's not surprised. He's not disappointed when you need rest. After all, God rested. Not because He needed to, but rather because He was showing an example for us. God is not shocked when your emotions are at the brink of a breaking point. He's not shocked because He knows your limits. He's designed you with limits. Matter of fact, we know limits are real because we have different kinds of limits. Like physical limits. We have physical limits. You might be thinking, no, I don't have limits. You might be 4'7" and still thinking you're going to make the NBA. Like, no, you have physical limitations. You can't swim from California to Hawaii. You have physical limits. You can't go a week without sleep and be pleasant. Some of you can't miss lunch and be pleasant. You have a limited amount of energy. You have a limited amount of energy. You have also emotional limits. You have emotional limits. Now that one is a little bit harder to identify, isn't it? It's a little bit harder to identify. Now we understand physical limitations. You might be able to carry one person, maybe 1.5 people. But how many people can you realistically carry emotionally? How many can you really carry emotionally? Where do you draw the line? We have mental limits. For those of you who are in school or have been in school, there's only so much information you can pack into the brain. After that, it's just like water on a hillside. Right? It's only so much information you can absorb. Yet media is overloading us with information. You have time limits. This might surprise some of you, but you're never going to have more than 24 hours a day. You're just not going to have more than 24 hours. And everybody starts in the same starting point. We all have an equal amount of time. It's not that we need more time, it's that we need more time management. And wouldn't it be nice if God would have installed a warning light right inside of us that blinked once we were 95% capacity and we were near overload? Well, guess what? God did. It's called pain. It's called stress. It's called fatigue. It's called irritation. It's called loss of joy. That's the dashboard inside of us saying, watch out, you're burning out. And the other day, we were coming from Seguin to the house. I took my daughters to go see a movie. And we're coming back, and we're laughing, we're talking, and I'm driving. And all of a sudden, the little bun in the car pops up. That is the yellowish bun that has a little wheel. Some of you are surprised now that that's a wheel. It is a wheel. Don't freak out. It's a little triangle with a little wheel. And it popped up. And I was like, okay, this shouldn't be popping up. And I looked at the wheels, and one of them was deflating rather quickly. And as we're driving, before we even hit Belmont, I'm like, okay, listen up, girls. And we hear I was like, okay, we got to stop. This is a great learning opportunity, by the way. My girls, they've learned how to change tires on the fly. We're learning how to do this, and we changed the tire. My girls were helping out, believe it or not. And I was thinking, the insanity of not having stopped on the side of the shoulder to see what was going on, right? We don't look at the light and look at it and say, I rebuke you, light. We don't do that. We don't do that, right? We pull over. If the oil light pops up, we check the oil. We don't rebuke it out. Well, guess what? You too have a spiritual dashboard. And it's called Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. If you go there for just a moment, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 through 25, this is your spiritual dashboard. It says, be fruitful. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, it's peace, is forbearance, is kindness, is goodness, is faithfulness, is gentleness, and it's self-control. When joy, when patience, when kindness and peace are gone, that's your warning sign. Sometimes the spiritual dashboard is telling you you're running hot. You're running hot. Now, bear with me here for just a moment. When you don't have any margin in your life, let's talk about each one of these qualities. Love. What's the opposite of love? Hate. Right? We start being hateful with people. We have no margin. We can only think about ourselves. All of a sudden, the spiritual fruit of love is not there. Rather, we have more of hate or being adversarial with people. Joy gets replaced with what? Sadness or depression. Right? For those of us who are going through some depression, is it because you have no margin? Because the spiritual dashboard says that we ought to have joy, peace. What does that get replaced with? Tension. Any of y'all have experienced fighting or getting tense moments in the relationship because one of you or both of you have no margin for a crisis, no emotional margin, no mental margin, no physical time margin? Peace gets replaced with tension. Forbearance, the ability to be able to handle more stuff is no longer there. Kindness, you replace it with brashness. Goodness, we replace it with, what's that? Badness. You're bad. You're bad. Faithfulness, all of a sudden, you don't fulfill your commitments because you have no margin. You're like, oh, I said yes, I should have said no. So now, all of a sudden, faithfulness gets replaced with abandoning responsibilities. Gentleness gets replaced with abrasiveness. Self-control, all of a sudden, I don't know if you realize this, when you have no margin, you have less control in your vices. Have you noticed that? You unhinge. You see, the spiritual dashboard is built inside of us. You know, when it says fruit, the fruit is something that is visible on the outside, but that is coming from the inside. That's the essence of fruit. When God is leading in your life, when you have margin in your life, something healthy should be growing out of you. If the only fruit growing out of you is irritability, resentfulness, sarcasm, exhaustion, then you need to pay attention. That's your spiritual dashboard. You can't live a healthy life while ignoring God-given limits. What's the warning light that you have been ignoring in your life? How do I identify it? Go through the fruits of the Spirit. Which one are you doing the reverse of? Here's the second thing, and that is in creating margin, expect to have problems. That sounds like a no-brainer. But let's look at John chapter 16, verse 33. And I want us to look at that because we have bought in, and by we I mean the Christian culture, generally speaking in the U.S., is very like prosperity driven to the degree that we're like, nothing bad should happen to you. And we have a very poor view of the theological understanding of suffering and struggle. So much so that we think that struggle is bad. And we see struggle as an opportunity for growth because we think that somehow God is punishing us. Like if somehow we should escape all sorts of struggle. Well, listen to Jesus. He says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you might. No. You will have a 50% chance. No, you will have a 99% chance of peace. No, it says, in this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Jesus didn't say, you might have trouble. He said, you will have trouble. And that's not Jesus being negative Ned, right? That's not him being negative. That's him being honest. And the word for trouble is the same idea of pressure or being squeezed, right? It's distress, it's hardship. Jesus doesn't promise peace because trouble never comes. Jesus promises peace in him when trouble does come. I want you to notice in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 3. What do we do with trouble, with hardship? Proverbs chapter 22, verse 3. It says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Now, this is a difference of choices here in this proverb. The wise person sees the danger and he makes adjustments. He or she makes adjustments. I see the danger. This is coming. I need to adjust my life if I want to survive. Last week I shared with you that at some point in my life, I realized if I want to do ministry until I'm way into my 60s and beyond, that I got to take care of myself now that I'm in my late 40s, 48 now. I got to make some adjustments because I can't be running on the same pace. I'm not as young as I used to be. But the simple person also sees danger, but they keep going. And the simple person pays the price. See, the difference is not that they don't see the danger. The difference is that one makes adjustments while the other does not make adjustments and therefore pays the price for it. Wise people plan for potholes in a dirt road. If I go visiting you and you live out in the boonies and a ranch, which almost all of you all do, I'm not taking the car that's low to the ground. I'm taking the Jeep that's really, high up. That's what I'm taking, especially if it's raining, icy, not that we get a lot of ice, harsh conditions. I'm not taking the little car. But foolish people or simple people act surprised when there are holes in the road, out in the ranch. Do you realize that the airlines, they inbuild 30 minutes as a safeguard of margin? A 1 hour flight is shown as a 1.5 hour flight because they inbuilt at least 30 minutes of boarding, air flight traffic, weather, a person in the wrong seat. Maybe you're the person in the wrong seat or we're the person in the wrong seat, right? They build margin because they expect problems. They expect problems. That doesn't mean that you live negative. It doesn't mean that now you start catastrophizing, like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I stubbed my toe, they have to amputate the whole leg now. It doesn't mean that you now go extreme on us. It means that you live wise. There's a difference between being pessimistic and being prepared. Big difference. Big difference. If you think everything is going to go as planned, guess what? You're grossly out of touch. Some people say, I just believe it's going to work out. Boy, that sounds real spiritual. Ever met that person? It's just going to work out. It's just going to work out. Sounds super spiritual until you're late. Super spiritual until you're out of gas on the side of the road. Sounds super spiritual until you're behind in the bills. You're yelling at the kids. You're blaming everybody because you didn't leave margin. You didn't prepare. You saw danger, but you kept going. See, we assume that everything's going to go right. We assume that when we drive to work, we're going to get every single green light. We assume that your children, for those of you who have little kids, that they're going to cooperate. Boy, you have something coming if you think that. We assume that every meeting will end on time. If you've met with me, you know that's not going to happen, right? We assume that every project will be simple. That's me. It takes me at least 4 to 5 times, if not more, to do a simple project. I just somehow end up having extra weird-looking bolts to repair something. We assume that everybody's going to respond quickly, that every machine will work the first time. That's not faith. You know what that is? That's fantasy. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do, the most spiritual thing I can do, is to leave earlier, is to say no sooner. Margin is wisdom that makes room for real life. That's margin. Number 3, in order to create this margin in our lives, this space between our current load and our breaking point, we got to prune our activities periodically. Pruning sounds nice until you're the branch that's being cut. We have this oleander in one of our windows. Now, we just got really blessed. Our home, although it's by the side of the road, you hear the ring. After a while, we lose sight of all the cars passing by. But in one of our windows in the living room, we can literally see the big flag, the come and take it flag. They're in town. Sometimes the American flag. We can see the tip of the courthouse. I was like, pretty awesome. Now, we got to squint to see it, but nevertheless, we can see it. Unless the oleander grows a little too much. And then we got to trim it down. And it's not like this pretty process like yank, cut. It can be very, very violent process. And although it looks rough at first, because you're cutting something that's alive, when you stand back, what do you think? You think, first of all, I might have killed it, right? But later, later it comes back healthier. Pruning is not punishment. Pruning is preparation for better fruit. And every year, for most of us, your activities will sprout. It's new responsibilities. It's a new team. It's a new opportunity. It's a new request. It's a new show. It's a new, can you just do this? And most of that, guys, is not evil. That's what makes it hard to prune good stuff. It's easy to say no to things you hate, right? It's easy. Most of us don't need spiritual discipline to say no to a root canal, right? It's easy to say no to a colonoscopy, right? You don't jump right into that one. It's easy to say no to an IRS audit, right? It's easy to say no. It's hard to say no to the good things in life, the non-sinful things in life, the very things that crowd out the best things of life. And Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 22, he said this, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is what? Beneficial. We have a lot of Christian freedom, a lot of freedom before we cross the age into sinfulness, or the edge in sinfulness. We have lots of freedom. But it says not everything is beneficial. It says I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. You know, the Corinth church and the Corinth people at the time were very well accustomed to freedoms, to pleasure, to success, to self-expression. And Paul's saying to them, you may have freedom. You may have freedom that doesn't cross you into the sinful zone, but not everything helps you. If something controls you, it's not freedom anymore. It's not freedom anymore. You know, he uses the word mastered, which is to be brought under the power of something. If you can't say no to it, it may be your master. It may be running you. And it could be a hobby, it could be a schedule, it could be a phone, it could be a relationship, it could be a really good opportunity. Not everything available is beneficial. Not everything good is assigned to you. Not every open door is yours to open. This is hard. This is really hard for people that have a very caring disposition. Because you tend to think, if I can help, I should help. But if you try to help everybody with everything, you may not have enough time to actually help the people God has clearly entrusted you to help out. You can't do everything. And it's not a failure when you can't do everything. That's discipleship. A disciple is someone learning to follow Jesus' leadership by living out his ways, his words, his works, as you and I are empowered by the Holy Spirit. But just like a closet, we keep on stuffing clothes in there. We never take anything out. I don't know how many of you have that closet. I have Marisa in my life. She's pretty good at cleaning stuff. If not, if you go to my office, you'll see a glimpse. It's just a little glimpse of what my life would be like if I didn't have her in my life. Everything would be cluttered. The closets would be full of stuff. And then one day I'd wake up, open the door, and a jacket from 2009 would start attacking me. That's how much stuff is in there that I would keep in there. And that's like your schedule. That's like our schedule. It can become like a closet. It's so full you can't find what matters. You can't make time or room for what matters without removing what's crowding your schedule, what's crowding your space. So for some of you, some of us, you've got to make one pruning decision. Not 10, one. Maybe some of you got to cancel something, pause on something, delegate something, put a boundary around something. Margin does not usually appear by accident. You have to make room for pruning. You have to make room for pruning. Here's the fourth one. Do less and trust God more. Now, it sounds very, very obvious, very simplistic. but boy, it's very hard to apply. Some overload comes from responsibility, but some overload comes from self-reliance. We carry too much because because deep down, some of us believe if I don't fix it, it won't ever get done. And maybe for some of you, that is the reality. Or if I don't say yes, they'll be disappointed. Or if I don't keep on pushing, everything will fall apart. Or if I don't slow down, I'll fall behind. I'll fall behind. That's mine, to be honest with you. That sounds very responsible, but underneath it all it's pride dressed up as commitment. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8, Paul shares one of the clearest verses of that counters one of our biggest lies that we've bought into our culture. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8 through 9, it says, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to be able to endure." I'll pause here for just a second. It doesn't say, man, it was almost too much. But in Jesus, no, it was way too much, period. It was more than we could endure, so that we despaired of life. Like it was so much that we thought we were going to die. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened. This is the reason why we had too much in our plate. This is why it was more than I could handle, that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raised the dead. Paul is saying we were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to be able to sustain, to handle. We were in despair. Our life was at stake. This was not just a bad day. This was a crushing pressure in their lives. That we might not rely, it says, on ourselves, but on God. The concept of trust, depend on God, to place your confidence in Him. See, the pressure for Paul exposed where his confidence was. God used it to teach you and I, when we're overwhelmed, it's way too much, to stop relying on ourselves. People often say, God will never give you more than you can what? Handle. Oh, sounds so good. I've used it so many times. Wrong! We keep on perpetuating that lie with people. I mean, because it sounds good and you feel good in the moment, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, Susie. Well, maybe Susie has more than she can handle so that Susie can seek the Lord instead of you. Have you ever thought about that? Maybe Susie does have enough. It's way more. Maybe we should. Maybe we should look at Susie and say, Susie, man, your life is a mess. It's not going to get any better. Boy, that really stinks. But Jesus. Hey, maybe it is more than you can handle, Susie, but you know what? It's not more than God can handle. And I think that's the key. That's the key. That, yes, it's more than you can handle, but absolutely no, it's not more than God can handle. Jesus didn't say busyness can move mountains. Ever notice that? Like, man, when you're busy, you can move that mountain. Just do more. No, what moves the mountain? Help me out. What moves the mountain? Faith moves the mountain. He talked about prayer. He talked about abiding more so than keeping busy. And I have to admit that many of us, I think many of you are like I am, it's hard for doers because prayer, quite honestly, feels slow. Anybody? You don't have to raise your hand. Anybody feel that way, I feel that way. Yeah, Eric, thank you for being the one. Yeah, we feel that way. It's like, man, do we pray or do we do? And we Americans, it's like, we do. We just do. Instead of praying. God can do more in 20 minutes than you can force in 20 years. God can do more in 20 minutes than you can force in 20 years. And that's either in your marriage, in your work, in your relationships. Faithfulness means doing what God gives me to do and trusting Him with what only He can do. It's like the farmer. He works hard. He prepares the land. He plants the seed. He watches it. Maybe he waters it a little bit. But he can't make the seed grow. And certainly he can't make the seed grow by yelling at it. Can you imagine, farmer, rancher's like, come on, you can do this. You can do this, baby. Come on, corn. Come out of that sand or that land, whatever it is. But you know what? Some of us are yelling at dirt. It's called pushing too much, forcing, worrying, overworking, overthinking, overmanaging, and overcarrying. God's like, do your best and trust me with the rest. Margin grows when I trust God. When I stop carrying what only God can carry. Some of us, like Kyle said earlier, are carrying stuff that you were never intended to carry. I start asking yourself the real, sobering questions like, is it a person that you're trying to fix? Is it a future that you're trying to control? Is it a burden that you're trying to carry alone? Is it a marriage or a child or a job decision or fear that you're carrying? All the while God's like, I want you to give me that outcome. The end result of your effort. Here's a prayer question. God, what is mine to do? And what am I trying to do that belongs to you? That's a very good question to ask the Lord. What's mine to do? And what am I trying to do that belongs to you? Some of us are squeezing ourselves out of good opportunities, good, wholesome opportunities. Like Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 through 9 and 10. 10 is like there's things that God has designed for us to walk into, good works. Some of us don't have enough margin to walk into those good works. So for some of you, take one obedient step and release one burden. That's not quitting, that's trust. That's trust. God is not inviting you to a crushed life. Jesus is not calling you to be overloaded, to be irritated, to be exhausted, to be spiritually depleted and empty. He's called you to live the fruits of the Spirit as He moves in your life and brings those about in your life. A life without margin is not an empty life. It's a life with room to do the things that matter most. Like room for God, room for people, room for peace and obedience, room for joy, room for a life with Jesus to form you to be the person that He's designed you to become. As we do communion today, may that be a moment of reflection. May that be a moment of sobering reflection of what is mastering us that we need to say, God, I rebuke that or repent of that.